So in a study of elderly patients, what percentage didn't want bad news kept from them? The answer was 83%.
That's right, and welcome back to The Right Stuff for this fine Tuesday morning. We've got Janet Ellis here, Craig Revel-Horwood, and our very special guest, the noisette star, Shingi Shonoa. How come it's Japanese?
It's a long story.
Make it quick. Go on, I want to know.
Oh, God, how do we make this one quick? OK, so before trade and commerce, East Coast of Africa, Indian Ocean, you get to Asia. If you sort of like just use your common sense, there's a lot of shared cultures, names and language that goes so far back than even books could even have written down. So we share a lot of words that mean the same thing in Japanese, and there is actually another musician who had the same name as mine. When I went to do a festival in Holland once, they said that I was this famous Japanese bassoon player from Japan. I thought, oh God! And when I go to Japan, it's even better because they look at my passport and they're like, yeah.
I'll tell you what, you learn something every day on this show.
Checkered past me, rainbow checkered past.
Now, on the programme today, still to come, do you know all about your partner's ex-loves, their ex-relationships? Or would you think it weird if they didn't want to talk about them if you asked? Knowing all about your partner's exes, can that improve your relationship or potentially ruin it? 0207 173 5555. That's the number for your thoughts. But first, I think probably a heavy discussion, but an important one. Does a sick child have the right to know how ill they are, even if the prognosis is bleak in the extreme? Or do parents have every right to withhold that information if they believe, in doing so, that it will help their son or daughter lead I keep saying normal life, I suppose happier life is probably a better word. Today's Daily Mail tells the story of Jeanette Gilderdale, who kept her 13-year-old daughter Rachel in the dark about her cancer. Doctors told her Rachel had a malignant melanoma on her leg, and a really bad one at that, and they said she had about 6 months to live. But Jeanette decided to conceal all this from her daughter. I want to make it clear right from the outset here that I'm not criticising Jeanette for her actions, as there's no doubt she believed she was acting with the best possible intentions. Indeed, Rachel went on to live another 4 years in blissful ignorance of her condition. I say blissful. I think just weeks before she died, following a collapse, Rachel told her mum that she knew she was dying, which begs the question how long she had actually lived with that suspicion. Jeanette believes keeping quiet about the true extent of Rachel's illness extended the youngster's life. Knowing that she was facing a death sentence would have led to her giving up perhaps on life much sooner, she argues. This is a point I've got doubts about, because if Rachel had known how little time she had, she may have lived her short life differently, more intensely. And then there's what about everybody else in the family who wasn't told? I mean, literally, Mum kept it from everyone, bar her own mother. Rachel's brother, who was 2 years older than his sister, didn't he have a right to know? And then there was Dad. Now, Dad's a fascinating case because he cleared off not long after his daughter turned 5 and had no contact with her. He didn't know about her illness until a couple of weeks before she died, when his ex-wife got in touch. But as soon as he heard, he rushed to be at her bedside. What if he'd been told earlier? Maybe Rachel would have had more time to develop a better relationship with her father. Now, terminally ill kids who do know they're dying can do amazing things in the short time they have. And there's one lady, Josie Grove, you'll remember, she passed away at the age of 16 2 years ago. And that was 2 years after being diagnosed with cancer. In that short time, she raised thousands for charity, won awards for her bravery, and was able to make her own decisions about her care. And she decided, you'll remember, not to have chemotherapy and other gruelling treatments, and decided to die in dignity surrounded by her family. Now, all those things were denied Rachel. So, Janet, I mean, do you think Mum did the right thing?
Yeah, I think she did do the right thing, actually. And this is only going on her story, because this is intensely personal. I think it depends who you think owns the information and what you think they want to do with it, because our reactions to death are very personal. And the case of Rachel's father, we don't know him, but the motives of someone rushing back to her bedside are broadly questionable to me, because if he hadn't had contact up till then, Was he trying to salve his own conscience by seeing her, or was he actually bringing something to her at that point?
But if he'd been told right at the moment of diagnosis...
But that's what I mean
But
about...
if he had been told right at the moment of diagnosis, they would have had 4 years to develop a relationship, not a couple of weeks.
They would, but he had the choice to develop that from when she was 5. So that's what I mean about the ownership of information.
What about her right to have a relationship with her father? Suddenly it was presented to her 2 weeks before she died. She could have had 4 years.
I think Jeanette made the right choice, because knowing her daughter, I suspect she thought that nothing else would be enhanced by him knowing that the relationship that they had lost in the important 5 years or 10 years before, he would have known at 14 that she was dying.
She had no time, because she had no information, to decide what to do with her own life. And I'm thinking, OK, 13, perhaps. By the time she's getting 15, looking at 16... You know, kids are growing up faster and faster.
You see, I think all this, that's what I mean about it being subjective. I think all that is the reaction of those of us who don't know when we'll die. And when my mother was dying, she never asked us if she was. I'm sure she knew. Well, and I think the conversations that we had...
In the stat we had over the break, it was 83% of elderly people want their doctors to tell them, even if it's bad news.
Yeah.
What's quite interesting is only 55% of relatives actually thought that their old folk actually would want to know.
Yes.
So there is this disparity there.
So it's who owns the information, isn't it? And as a parent, you have to take... Yeah, but as a parent, you're then taking... You know, that is what you do as a parent, is you guide your children.
Go on, Craig.
And if you feel that they don't
But I think, you know, at 13, that's old. You know what I'm saying? You know what you're about at, like, 9, 10. And I know that if I was a sick child, I would like to know. I totally would like to know.
Does it depend how old you are? If you're 6 years old, that's different from if you're 16.
Yeah, but I think, you know, if you're growing up with an illness, and that's what you're doing, essentially, I think you should know about it and understand that illness. And then, of course, you can help others. You can make people aware of that illness. You can maybe even help, you know, cure it in a way, you know, as a 6-year-old. Yeah. You know, you've got a lot to offer the world as a 6-year-old if you're ill in that respect. And I think it's, I don't know, I think it's blind of the parents not to tell the child, to be honest. I really do. I think that's only, obviously, my opinion. And I understand, you know, being a parent, you know, wanting to love, nurture and bring the child up so they don't know, and who can prove whether that actually extends the child's life or not.
Absolutely.
You can't prove that.
The point I would make, Shingy, is that we're all dying. That's the one certain thing you get after being born, along with taxes, as the famous saying goes. So if we're all dying, we don't go around telling everybody else, you're dying, you're dying, you're dying, we're all decaying, isn't it sad? We don't tell each other that. So maybe there is an argument not to tell a child that they're dying.
I think that maybe I'm not a parent myself, but I can imagine that the parent would want to maybe be a buffer and almost experience what they don't want their child to experience. But I think a lot of parents in this day and age, with all the information that's out there, would be surprised that children can sometimes surpass their parents' strength.
Absolutely.
And because the parents taking on all the burden of protecting their child from the pain, sometimes they're taking for granted that that child could be made stronger and might not feel as much pain once they have the knowledge of how they can live,
you know,
how they can live with their illness. I think you can't live all your child's experiences for them, but you can only protect them from so much. And there are a lot of kids out there who actually parent their parents. Yes. So I think maybe the society we live in should offer those kids support who sometimes have to look after their
loads and loads of calls, which I'm delighted about, because it's not exactly hearts and flowers, this discussion, is it? So let's hear what you would say. Kirsty.
First we have Audrey, and she's on line 4.
Audrey, good morning.